Woohoo!
Well,
Okay, guys.
hey, episode two.
What up, baby?
Episode two.
Episode
Um,
of.
Bombay had 1 day of winter, 1 day without fan. We had to kind of survive the cold. How is Delhi doing for you?
I am freezing. I have been using an electric blanket and a heater. I am currently wearing two sweaters, two socks, and had it not been for this recording, I would have had like a beanie on. But to be fair, it's me, it's not Delhi, but Delhi is getting super, super, super chilly.
Amazing. This is like, you realize this is like the weirdest way to start these conversations because we're talking about weather, which is the one thing you should not talk too much about, but that's the best way to start. So that you can think faster. But what's been going on this week? What have you been kind of reading up on? What's been going on? I know a lot of stuff happened this week.
Yeah, and lots of like small things. Obviously, the cherry on the
Mm.
cake was Mr. Jack Dorsey
Yes.
resigning as CEO of Twitter,
Yeah.
and that mantle has been taken on by Parag Agrawal, not Agarwal.
But
It
why
was
do
super
these
funny.
last names have to change? What is the deal with these like slightly?
Keep it consistent, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Or be a
but
Dogirala.
oh God, please definitely don't be a Salwan. It takes like 600 years to just say my full name from top to bottom. But a very fun fact is I was actually LinkedIning Parag Agarwal. I spelled it as Agarwal, not Agrawal. And it was super funny
Hmm?
because the first thing that showed up was this guy who said, I am not Twitter CEO.
Yeah,
Please
even I saw
don't
that. I
DM.
saw that.
Yeah, which was amazing. So yeah, Jack Dorsey stepping down. Scott Galloway is a happy man somewhere. What
Oh
have
man,
you
so
found?
happy.
So happy.
But I think it was expected, in many ways when I look at it. He obviously has been talking a lot about crypto all through his Twitter feed. It was bound to happen. I actually thought something else will happen. I actually thought he'll try to merge Square and Twitter because it just makes sense to bring them together. But yeah, maybe he'll still do that. Considering so many apps are now part of what's it called? Block.
Yep.
He's renamed it as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, so Block, he's basically renamed the Square holding entity as Block. And obviously, the assumption over there is that, Square will have a much larger play than, just payments, which has been their area of focus so far.
Yeah.
That was massively interesting. Unfortunately, we lost a legend. Virgil Abloh died
Hmm.
at the
Yeah.
young age of 41. For
Yeah.
those of you who aren't familiar, Virgil Abloh is like, he's like a beacon of hope, right, in all things fashion and lifestyle. First African American leading the realm of design at Louis Vuitton. And just an all around creative maverick. So all of the internet was pretty bummed about him losing his life to cancer. But yeah,
Yeah.
Virgil Abloh passed on, which is
Yeah.
really, really
I think
sad. But what he stood
I
for
think
is
they're doing his
excellent.
last collection as a show. I think today when we're recording this, or I think yesterday. I'm not sure.
I think it's already happened, and it was really, really lovely. There was again all across my Instagram because evidently I follow all the Kardashians. So there
Hmm.
was this homage of like Virgil was here, and all of that. In other news, and moving back to the Indian shows,
Hmm.
the Morning Context, a popular subscription news platform, took a giant piss on Ola's founder Bhavish Agarwal
Oh,
in
that
their
article.
recent expose. Do you like
That
these
article is something
exposes?
else.
I,
So
I find it a little toxic.
yeah.
What about
So
you?
here's my thing, right? And I look at the Ken. I look at the Morning Context. Everybody reads them. All of us read, but at some point you don't have to go across that line of. It feels almost bitchy, for lack of another term, because you kind of. I mean, all companies have issues. Highlight what's going on, but you don't have to make it like masala filled, right? You don't have to go full Rohit Shetty on him.
Rohit Shetty. That was amazing. You win. You win joke of this episode, Varun. You've already won joke of this
Ashish
episode.
Mishra as
No.
Suryavanshi.
No, but I agree with you, man. I think the upside to all of this is there is this higher accountability and a higher bar that's been set in
Yeah.
terms of what expectations from founders are and should be, which is great. But you're totally right. Just the way it's done comes off as a little personal. It's not even about the
Yeah.
work anymore. It just seems very vindictive,
On the
which
other side,
hopefully
though,
changes.
On the other side, what I feel is also interesting is if you see the last couple of things like this, right? There's obviously been conversations around Oyo, there's Ola, there is even we spoke about Paytm and VSS last time. At some point, this um, you know we kind of latching on to, and there are two sides of this problem, right? One side of the problem is basically that you have founders who are trying to control everything and kind of build their own personas, but on the other end, you also have um, you know you have publications turning around and saying, why are you trying to be god? And I think that somewhere in the middle lies the truth, but
Yep.
I just think it's making the whole space feel a little toxic.
Yeah, I really do. Shout out to the Cap Table. I don't know if you
Mm,
follow them, but
I do.
I've been, I subscribe to their platform, and I really like how, generally nuanced, focused their reporting is. So really like what the Cap Table's pushing out, and yeah, I hope there's less Rohit Shetty, specifically
Yes.
in the tech media and
Yeah.
coverage space. Cred is
Yeah.
back in the news, man. Cred made a
Yeah.
massive acquisition, $150
And a not
million.
so great ad.
I totally missed the Chacha Chaudhary ad, but I'll get your
I
two
saw it.
cents on that.
It's so here's the thing, right? You took two characters, you could have done so much with it. It just felt meh. That's the way to
Yeah.
explain it. It's a very meh thing because you're trying to say a lot of things, but it lacked the character of a Supandi and a Chacha Chaudhary, both characters of whom I was a fan of growing up. So yeah, I think more missed opportunity there though, more than anything else. But
But
yeah,
they'll be
happy.
back. Yeah, happy massive acquisition. $150 million is, or whatever the range of that acquisition was, is
Yeah,
no
yeah,
loose change by any barometer. But we're going to talk about acquisitions a little later in the episode.
yeah,
Should we
yeah.
kick off with segment number one, Varun? Are you ready to
Yes,
think
let's do that.
fast?
Let's do that.
Um,
Yes.
Amazing.
Your
So,
question. So
listeners who are
think fast.
joining us,
Basically,
yes,
one
tell
second.
us, tell
One
us,
second.
Varun.
You have forgotten the most important thing. This we have to go for a break before we go for think fast.
Oh,
Don't you have to go
Jesus.
for a break?
There we go.
We have to go for a break. See, I'm always there for the advertisers on the show. I believe we do have them, and so we'll be right back with Think Fast and the Think Fast segment. Welcome back to Think Fast on a lovely Saturday morning as we record this. Um, Bombay is nice and warm, and Delhi is freezing. Suchita, who has a mild cold, as I can make out.
Yes. Sniffles right here.
That was
But
a very
we're going to
lucky yes.
jump. Yes, this is my
Yes.
Elizabeth Holmes voice, guys. Though
Oh
she's
no.
changed the decibel. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
how the second she enters court, it's like her voice becomes like Jennifer Lawrence's all of a sudden.
I'm scared
But
of
no
anybody who
more.
wears turtlenecks.
I am not wearing any turtleneck, guys.
Yes, you're
Just
not wearing.
clarifying. My voice is just
Yes.
deep, but my neck isn't turtling. But let's cut straight to the chase. Think Fast is our segment where, for those of you who've missed it, we basically, it's a rapid fire segment. Varun and I ask each other a quick question or throw a phrase at one another, and we have to come up with the quickest, fastest response. None of us win a hamper, but it is what it is. Varun, are you ready
Yes.
for Think
Yes.
Fast?
And we'll try to be more rapid this week. Last week was not rapid at all or fast. Try to be more
Yes.
rapid.
Okay, to the point, to the point. So, Varun, first
Yes.
question for you. Your Think Fast on Ola Electric.
Um, Still pretty bullish on it. I mean, if you're looking at it globally, in terms of just how things are going with even like a Tesla, everybody else, pretty bullish. It's a smart move. The problem honestly lies in the rest of the company. How is he going to be able to look at everything together and really be able to meet the orders? But still bullish. I still think it's a great move. From me to you, what do you think about Spotify Wrapped? Just got done. What was your term? What did you kind of what was surprising for you? But also, like, what do you think about the whole Spotify rap thing?
So let me start by saying you will not be surprised that I am not a Spotify subscriber.
Of course not.
I'm of course not. I'm still on One Plus 5S, guys. So that's a qualifier of how much
Terrible,
money I
terrible.
have to give to technology apps and everything else. No, but so I'm not on Spotify, so I didn't get access to any Spotify Wrapped. But
Terrible.
we have there's some iPad in the house that has Spotify on it, and I had a a
Hmm.
chance to go through, everything that I've heard over the course of the year. Irrespective, shout out to, I want to definitely give a shout out to Amit Verma, who I think I've spent all of 2021 with, courtesy his long, meandering, but very, very informative 3
Yeah.
hour episodes. So if I did have access to Spotify, that would probably be number one on my Wrapped, along with Taylor Swift and Adele, which both of whom we covered last week. I think it's genius, man. I think just the amount of like, word of mouth free viral marketing that Spotify gets as a
Yeah.
outcome of Wrapped is incredible. What was on your list, given that you
Um,
are definitely more with it than I
m-
am?
Mellow and happy. So largely, lo-fi is what I listen to all day long. Lo-fi music. So I was very like, mellow in this. I somehow neither Jugnu or Diljit songs came up. Although I listened to them a lot, so I was very like, I was pleasantly surprised that Punjabi was not my top category. But podcasts though, Pivot was number one. Surprise,
Pivot
surprise.
was no.
Pivot was number one. Most listened to podcast. But yeah, it's just genius. Just in terms of how they've been able to do it. And also other lots of other Spotify news, which maybe we'll talk about later.
Yep,
Your
yep,
turn.
yep.
Your turn.
Yes, 10-minute delivery. What is your take on quick commerce?
This is basically um, anti. This is okay. Everyone's trying to be a Kirana store right now. I think that's the problem. Is that people still call your local Kirana store and order stuff you want it quickly. You only order from apps if you're okay to get stuff much later. So everyone's trying to get into that. I don't know if it makes economic sense, to be honest. I think the Kirana store will always win on this front. So I have a feeling, looking at where Reliance might be going with this, they might actually win this one because um, I think they'll aggregate the Kirana stores. And so that's where my bet lies on this front. What about you? What do you think?
Absolutely. I agree, man. I think, given that food delivery itself is a question mark in terms of its capacity to generate profits, I wonder where quick commerce will lie. And you're right. I don't think. I think there are a lot of other fights you can put up against Reliance. I'm not sure if this is a segment that you want to mess with
Yeah.
Reliance on. So we'll see how this plays out. Apparently, it's weaning off in the US. So all of your,
Also,
Joker
if
and
this is the
15
only thing
20.
you do, it's not going to work.
Yeah,
I think that many of these
agree. As
startups is
we
only saying only this delivery, right? I'm like, how is this going to make sense for you in the
Okay,
long term?
Varun,
You're
we
not
need
making
to
any
think
money.
fast. Let me pull
Oh,
you
sorry,
back.
sorry,
We
sorry.
need to
I'm
think
going to go on
fast.
long,
Yes.
long. Yes. Next one for you. So two things. There have been two interesting things that have happened on YouTube in the last couple of weeks. One has been Mr. Beast made his entire Squid Game version with 456 people playing for money, just like in terms of numbers, right? It took him 9 minutes to hit a million views on that video. 1.4 million is the number of subscribers he received in a single day because that video dropping, right? He basically broke YouTube in many ways. There are enough videos with million plus views of how that whole set was made. The guy who made that set got like I think some massive amount of numbers in there. On the Indian front, you had Bhuvan Bam who released his series on YouTube by basically making his channel into his own OTT in that sense on YouTube. Hit what I think what let me put that number on 250 million in terms of views across the entire season. So there is something changing here. This is not a traditional way to put things. Go sell a property or do something on an OTT, but you're just putting stuff on YouTube and you're making massive amounts of money. So, what do you think of this?
That was a very long question,
Sorry,
Varun.
sorry.
Your
I'll just give
question
you
was
the
my
data,
answer.
data,
just,
data,
just the
data.
data. No, but I think a shout out to Mr. Beast, man. I know you've been a big fan and a proponent of like just his ability to create at scale. After you brought up Mr. Beast in our last episode, I actually spent like 25 minutes watching that video from top to bottom. That guy is what a creator should be, right?
Yeah,
You can like in his face, you can see the joy that he has when it comes to creating. And I think the thing that Mr. Beast stands for is that just because you're pushing content out on YouTube or Instagram or wherever else, you don't have to be jugadu about it, right? Like he's
mm,
literally like the opposite of jugadu. You can see how much effort he puts into everything he does, and
yeah,
I think folks like him really stand for what the manifestations that creator economies can take in the future, and I hope we end up really deep diving on all things
yeah,
creators, which I know is something that you're very passionate about. I haven't
yeah,
seen
yeah.
Bhuvan Bam's Dindora yet, So that's going to
Yeah.
be on my like homework list of what to do,
Yeah.
and where I'm going to spend time this weekend.
Just to
But
explain Dindora, he plays all the
yes,
characters himself.
what?
Yeah, so
This is like one man show.
he's the main creator, he's the main character, he's also the mom, he's also the dad, he's also the uncle, he's also the villain, he's everybody. There are scenes where in the entire frame there are four of him. This is a YouTube
Wow,
series, so it's
jeez,
crazy how well that's
and
been
he
made.
made
And
this
there's actually,
himself.
yeah, it's produced by him.
Holy
Yeah.
shit! Wow, good on
Yeah, it's
him.
crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's so ambitious, and it's something else in just in terms of just scale of what's been created. Um, Also on the Mr. Beast front, one more data point. I have lots of data on that. He spends 48 million a year to make his videos. $48 million a year just to make his videos, because every set is made for one video. He doesn't reuse a set ever.
Which is incredible, but it goes back, you can see it on his face. So listeners, if you're like listening to this, and though we've gone on and on and on about Mr. Beast, but you have to see the joy with which this guy creates. It is truly,
Yeah.
truly infectious. Okay, think fast, Varun.
Yes.
Block,
Yes. Yes.
all things
I think
block.
we're moving towards a point of super apps really becoming a thing. I know it's always been a China focused aspect, but I think more than super apps, I feel what this is going to be is, if you look at what happened with Meta, Alphabet before that, and now with Block, you're realizing the fact that you have so many varied services, and you still have one brand name. I think they're all trying to bring this whole bundling together, and also keeps the founders a lot more safe, right? You're not worried about anything wrong that happens on one platform. You have people who will run each of these. So I think it's smart. I think he's moved towards crypto. If you realize, if you go to the announcement video for Block, there is this one, they've tagged all the brands which will be part of it, and one of it is TBD. Just at the rate TBD. So, interesting.
Making money moves. Okay, you
Yes.
have one last question for me.
Yes. So there's this is something which happened a couple of weeks ago. But I thought it's interesting. A TikTok creator, he raised 1.5 million to launch his own ice cream shop. All his content is on ice cream. So he raised $1.5 million to launch his own ice cream shop. What do you think about that?
I think this is incredible. And this is where, like, creator everything should be going, right? I think this is the real, like, unlocker of what a platform like TikTok can do. I think what's sad in all of this is how far behind Instagram is. Like, anytime I get any news on, efforts that TikTok's making, or just what TikTok stars are being able to do, and even YouTube stars for that matter, you don't hear these kind of stories when it comes to Instagram creators, for some reason, right? Either locally or even internationally for that matter. So Instagram really seems to have like missed the boat somewhere on what they're enabling creators to do. I don't know. Have you heard anything recently from
So
them?
the interesting part is that in India, though, thanks to the TikTok ban, Instagram's been able to do a lot more. But I feel just the way they're moving right now, last few months, if you follow Adam Mosseri, the Instagram CEO on Instagram, um, just the changes he's made to the platform, how it's kind of moved towards a lot being it's not exactly TikTok, but it's moving in a direction that's interestingly between YouTube and TikTok. Um, I, I think it's still an opportunity for them. They're doing some interesting things though. They're working with a lot of businesses who are building on top of Instagram. So I think that's really where something might just happen. But yeah, TikTok seems to be doing so much more from a global standpoint, but they don't have India.
Yep, they don't have India. But I know we are going to talk about all things social commerce later on
Yes.
in this episode. So Varun, kick us off, man. What happened in the week that was, and what are the three things we're going to be, catching up on over the course of the next couple of minutes?
So we're going to be diving into a lot of. There've been a lot of mergers and consolidations, right? It's been like almost like, okay, come, let's all be together. Let's become one family. It's like Rajshri Films version of the startup
What
ecosystem
is
has
your
happened in.
obsession with movies today? Rohit Shetty, Rajshri Films. Now there's going to be a Karan Johar entering
I love
somewhere.
Rajshri Films. They're so good. I'm waiting for who's going to be Tuffy. If you remember the
Oh my
dog,
god.
who wears a cap saying "friend." So I'm like, okay, I will not go that far. We're also going to talk about NFTs, right? I think we haven't spoken about NFTs yet, and it's so interesting where the space is kind of going in India, obviously. So the problem is it's obviously there's a lot of talk about that, trying to dive and kind of simplify things a little bit, and also. some stuff around consumer brands and a deep dive around social commerce, which you and I have talked about a lot in terms of where it's kind of going. We're going to bring that offline chat into this podcast. So that's all we're going to do. And you have some weird what the fuck news to also kind of.
Yes. There's all sorts of like random things happening on the internet, but let's kick off with first and foremost consolidations and mergers. So
Yeah.
listeners, just a quick rundown of everything that's been happening. Pristine is apparently acquiring Practo. Cred made a massive announcement of their big fat acquisition of business expense management app called Happy. MX, Takata and Morge are apparently getting into bed together. Other slightly older acquisitions, but let's just throw them out there for fun. MyGlam has been on an acquisition spree ever since last year with, Popexo, Baby Chakra, more recently Scoop Whoop. Roposo's tying up with collective artists. Chatterbox has gotten acquired by QU Media. A lot of this and much more has been happening in the past couple of months. Varun, let's kick off with Pristine and
Yeah.
Prato. What is this Milan happening with Pristine and Prato?
It's interesting, right? Because if you look at just like the size of the companies, Pristine is smaller from what I've read than Practo, and also fairly newer in that sense.
Yeah, much,
So,
much, much newer. But I think the thing that Pristine has done is, it seems like, and not to, not that it's literally the same thing, but Pristine and Practo kind of seems like Nika versus Amazon, where Practo
yeah,
took the anything and everything approach, and they kind of became like this house of all things, doctors or like medical related. And
yeah,
Pristine seems to have taken a very like focused, approach, where if you open their website, they say this simplifying the surgery experience. So they've
yeah.
stuck to surgery as a category and gone really, really deep within that.
I also think Practo at some point had two problems, right? Practo was a lot more like Just Dial
Master of none.
in many
Yeah.
ways. Yeah,
Yep.
it was almost a listing service. I remember using it, and I remember meeting doctors who were confused. I come from a family of doctors. I asked them about it, and they were like, "Okay, one second. It just most of them don't need it. You might just get access through it once. You weren't really booking through it, and so maybe they were too early. Maybe they were too just dialish. And I feel that this can actually maybe help them focus a little better because now people are doing stuff right. So imagine if Practo had was a little more fresh around the time of the pandemic starting off, and maybe people would have used that a lot more. I think it'll just get them more focused. But it's also because of who's their main investor is, right? I'm gathering
Sequoia.
that's one of the main. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm guessing
that's
it's like
the
Aajo
yeah, that's
bachcho saath
Seema
mein,
auntie. Seema auntie,
Aajo bachcho.
Indian matchmaking, yes, happening right here. No, but I think consolidations and mergers are obviously not new, and I can put stick my neck out and predict to some extent that you're going to see much more happening
Yeah.
in this space over the course of the next year, because just the amount of dry powder that's in within our ecosystem, and obviously, though there seems to be this general enthusiasm about companies raising money, this that or the other, that money is actually gone into very few companies and very few hands, right? And you're
Mm,
going to see more and more of these companies really look at mergers and acquisitions as a way to,
yeah.
one, either make their valuations make sense, or the second is diversify what they're offering to consumers are. So Pristine and Practo is just the beginning.
Yeah.
Happy is very happy with their
Yes.
with the influx of capital, and I'm assuming the ROI that they've got on the Cred
Yeah.
deal. For those of you who are uninitiated, Happy is essentially a business expense management app. Claims to have about 6,000 clients, all of which will fall, within the Cred universe. Cred's also making money moves, man. There's been some chatter about them, being in conversation with some wealth management app, apparently Dine Out as well, as per
Yeah.
reports in a couple of media publications. What do you think the strategy is over here? So if you were, leading M&A at Cred, what are you thinking?
Um, I don't want to keep saying super app all the time, but literally finance super app, right? And I think a couple of things which it's very apparent that at some point, I mean, if Cred doesn't launch a credit card at some point in time, I would be surprised. I'm pretty sure Cred will end up launching a credit card at some point in time. Everything around finance, because weirdly enough, it is the only cool finance app. Let's be honest. It has so much recall. They can get into B2B. They can be on the B2C side. They can do so much here. But and people will generally almost gravitate towards it just to understand what they have, because you associating it with being, almost has that halo in that sense, right? So I think that's really what the interesting part with credit is. And but they just want to keep bringing more stuff into it, more fee. I think it's basically you're acquiring for fee. I think for them it's like, okay, I don't have to build this, let me just acquire it, which is one of the classic M&A things. But okay, and that's what they're doing. But yeah, good for the happy guys.
Yeah, I think I think what obviously logically Cred is doing is they're trying to own as many use cases for
Yeah.
credit, right? And you've seen that in what they've rolled out in their app, whether it's been their peer-to-peer lending feature, which I think was called Mint. You
Mm.
can apparently pay your rent through Cred.
Yeah, you
So
can
they've
parent. Yeah.
created all of these. Exactly. So I think fundamentally it's centered around creating triggers for credit, and either taking credit or like giving credit,
Yeah.
and obviously Happy is an extension of that. When I read
Yeah.
this news, that iconic Jay-Z line, "I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman."
Man.
Do you know what I'm talking?
Yes, yes,
Yes,
I know what you're talking about.
man. Yeah. So this, that was like the first thing that came to my head, which is just the use cases of credit, specifically in the life cycle of businesses, and how I'm assuming there's a plenty full of cred customers and
Yeah.
also potential cred customers that could expand their use cases through this acquisition. So really interesting to see this happen. Why Happy? I'm not particularly sure, because Happy does have a bunch of competitors, but I'm
Mm.
assuming there's obviously some like team fitment,
Yeah.
culture fitment, all of those things that stack up to have made this M&A happen.
I think one of the things, right, and because I've been through an acquisition with on my end, generally you do it for three reasons. You do it for talent, which I'm guessing in this case helps them take care of a category of people. You'll have a kind of, let's say, the founding team kind of come in and help manage that. You either doing it for, like you said, services, and add more things there. I also think it'll add to growth, because if you have something that's already running, and you're just trying to add more revenue into the mix, because at some point, another question comes up occasionally with credit, is that when is credit going to start making money? And I think that's still like some time away, just in terms of the scale and the valuation they have. But I feel these things all help. They help in the long run, because you have, as long as you let people who are running it run it, run that aspect of it, and run it, and not take away any of that part, it will work in the long term.
So if I had to ask you a question, right, what do you see cred acquiring next? So like, what do you, given that they're basically in the business of creating triggers for credit, if you were them, what would you acquire next?
If I were them, I would figure a way to get, and I don't know if they already have, figure a way to kind of, like I said, either someone who's just kind of starting off one of those digital credit card pieces, get something of that in. I would actually acquire, weirdly enough, um, the most interesting part of credit for me is the marketplace where you can actually sample products. I would actually acquire someone who does that really well and kind of bring that into the service, because I think that's a, you don't realize how much people buy stuff on cred. I'm seeing people do that more and more. I know I buy a lot of stuff on cred as well. I think that could be really interesting. Bring somebody in who does that part really well.
Nice, nice, nice. You have done some digging in on all things NFTs and Indian musicians
Yes.
cracking that space. So educate me,
Yeah.
Varun. I have no idea about what's happening in the Indian musician NFT space.
But you know, the interesting part about NFTs, right, is the fact that everyone, when it first came out, everyone talked about NFT, and I was one of those people who kept saying I'm illiterate. I have no idea what this is, right? I actually learned a lot more about NFTs by a DM. I tweeted saying I have no idea what NFTs. Can someone teach me what NFTs are? And I had this guy who DM me on Twitter and said, "Can I get on a call and explain it to you?" And this guy was like what 19, 20 in college, starting his first NFT startup. So he spent an hour
Wow.
explaining NFTs to me like I was a child in kindergarten, and it was the best explanation I got. So here's a few things which we don't kind of get about NFTs, right? Is the fact that everyone's like, okay, what's the point of buying it? What am I going to get? And I think to simplify and understand this, you are buying art, of all forms, and you're investing into artists or creators in that sense. So let's say you, the classic example, right? Would you have the Mona Lisa, the original, or the fake one many people have at home? But you can actually show that you have the original. So digital art was an obvious one. With musicians, the interesting part is, even if you look at the fact that, how people have had, like, first edition books, or you had, like, I've had that original record that came out for this one, or and, like, let's say bootlegs and stuff like that. They have that old LP or cassettes die, but
Vinyl?
unfortunately,
You mean vinyl?
vinyls. You brought it
Yeah.
up. I did not bring it up. So
This is
I
a
think that's the
reference to a
interesting
joke
part.
from last episode, listeners. Just
Yes,
clarifying.
yes. You called vinyl.
I
Yes.
usually say records, and my vinyl collection is pretty fucking good. In any case, let's not
I'm
distract you from
apologizing for my
NFTs.
dogs barking in the background.
That's okay.
I
Continue.
cannot control them. So back to NFT. So the interesting part here is you look at the musicians who are launching NFTs right now. You obviously have like Divine. There's Euphoria. Interestingly, Nuclear and Ritviz have been doing
Euphoria
this.
still around? Wow.
Euphoria is still around. Doctors at it. You know he's a doctor, right?
Damn.
The lead singer.
Yeah. This much I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing with this is that if you have an artist's NFT, as their catalog scales, as they grow, in many ways the value of that grows. It's just that you're investing in the person. The problem is you've never had the ability to invest into an artist in this form. And because now with the whole digital space, you can actually see that scale in that sense of the word. So let's say, for instance, we spoke about Mr. Beast and Bhuvan Bam earlier, right? Imagine if they had NFTs early on and you could invest in it, and if you own that, that would have so much more value today, because just from a badge value, from a credibility value, it's so much higher. So the opportunity is to kind of invest uh, into creators, into artists. But I think also the interesting part here is that with smart contracts, which is for me the best part of of an NFT, is where you can actually put something in which says that you know, whenever a transaction, like let's say I own an NFT of Euphoria, right? I used to like Euphoria. I don't know if I still do, but I used to like Euphoria. And I bought an NFT. Let's say if it was made when they were younger, today that would have value. But and I decide to sell it to you, they still get a chunk of change from that sale. So which means for life, an artist doesn't have to. It's not like you've sold a song once and you're never going to get any money again. But
Yeah.
every time somebody does, pass on. Like if I'm passing on a song to you, then they still make money out of it. So I feel it's going to open up options to monetize the past, which I think is the most interesting part. It's also going to bring in an interesting model. I think there was a Wu Tang Clan NFT that no, the Wu Tang Clans. There's an album of theirs which was never released, and that's been auctioned off so many times. I think recently, I forget there was it a Russian millionaire or somebody else who billionaire who bought it for a bizarre size of number because it's never been released. There's only one copy which you can buy. Now imagine that as an NFT. So you're looking at things which are physical moving to the digital space. There's That something you dug up on an old demo recording, which
Yeah,
you
I don't think I dug this up. I think our lovely producer Aditya Vora did
oh,
this.
well
Yes,
done, Vora.
no, yeah, but to the point that you made around NFTs, I actually had a quick question for you. You know, you obviously see a lot of musicians make it mainstream in the US, in the
Yeah,
American context, and
yeah.
even in the British context to a significant extent. You haven't necessarily seen any breakout stars in the Indian music context, right? Like you, of course, you have like Divine, Badshah, Ritviz, and all, but they're exceptions and not the rule. So, do
Yeah.
you see the rule changing through application of NFTs? So, basically, my single question to you is: do you think this will end up being like a construct that continues to create more value and money for folks who already
Yeah.
have enough value and money created by them, or do you really see more emerging artists benefit from stuff like this?
I think two things here, right? If you look at the last 2 years, India's predominantly always been a movie music industry. But the last 2 years, if you realize, and I don't know if it's because of COVID and movies not releasing, is that you've seen this rise in just independent music being the mainstream part now. Like if you look at even movies now, movies have taken like say, a Punjabi song, put it in there. So hypothetically, let's say you're a Punjabi artist and suddenly your song gets put into, let's say, an Akshay Kumar movie. That value of that NFT, if you own an NFT of that person, goes up because it's out there a lot more. So I think independent music is here to kind of scale now. Now we're finally at that point, and all artists are also creators. Not they're not
Hmm.
just doing one thing. They're doing videos. They're doing merch. They're doing, they have massive following online. So all that is scaling up. But I think the most interesting part of NFTs, and it gets spoken about a lot lesser, is the whole community NFT piece. So let's say you're a group of artists together. If I'm a record label today, if I'm an independent record label today, and I say, okay, I have 5 great artists, and I'm going to make a community NFT, which basically says that all the artists together in some form are a part of this. So even if one of them scales, all of them scale.
Hmm.
So, and I think that makes it interesting because then you're betting on a cluster. It's almost like a mutual fund. It's like a mutual fund of artists and artists in that sense, where you're investing into that cluster, and even if one
Yeah.
rises, the collective value kind of goes up. And it's great for all of them as well because it'll make them collaborate a lot more. It'll make them do a lot of stuff together, and so I don't think this will just be a flash in the pan. I think now is actually when you're seeing a lot more independent artists. Like Ritviz is a great example. Nuclear has been around for a long time. People forget Nuclear has
Yeah.
been around since Bandish project.
Yep.
And it's been, but I think the other side is like I would buy so many Punjabi musicians NFTs if they launch. Like I would buy a Hadi Sandhu NFT. Like I would definitely buy. I would double down on that
I
one.
don't know who that is, but
You
I
don't know
have
Hadi
like
Sandhu? I have to make you listen to
no.
Bijli, which is my latest like in stuck in my head track,
God.
where he
No,
sings
I
about Cinderella. Cinderella.
what? Like
Cinderella.
literally. Oh no, Varun, no, no. Sing the song, Varun. Come on. Entertain our listeners.
Cinderella.
Okay, give us
I
one
don't know
line.
Punjabi.
Acha,
That is the
okay.
line. He says Cinderella.
Oh,
Cinderella is
Jesus.
in the
Okay.
lyrics.
Amazing. I love the way I
Yes.
am being like pop culture schooled by our 40-year-old could have been a doctor but turned out to be a
Yes.
podcaster. No, but just one quick thing to all our listeners. If the space of NFTs generally confuses you, I highly recommend you read this article by Rex Woodbury. Was recently published in the Atlantic. So just do a quick Google search of Rex Woodbury, the Atlantic. And he really does a phenomenal job of breaking down all things non-fungible tokens and fungible
Yeah.
tokens. To Varun's point, just the application in the context of the Indian music scene, which unfortunately, has been hasn't seen much reinvention apart from a few breakout stars. As we discussed,
Yeah.
Ritviz, Badshah, and all. So let's see what this really shapes into. But I do think it's too early.
There's one more
I
thing
do.
though, which I
Mhm.
there is an example. Sorry, I'm coming in because and I just realized this is that there's an NFT startup in the US called Royal, which raised about $55 million recently, which is an interesting story, right? You're saying you're allowing people to invest into artists and the specific tracks, and that NFT gives people access to royalties of those tracks. So let's say you have, and as you're seeing, like Sejal Kumar, the Instagram creator, recently released a song. She's kind of going the Olivia Rodrigo, if I get her name right.
Correct.
That
Yes.
route of things, right? So let's say if you say, okay, fine, I'm going to double down on Sejal's one, which is showing up in a lot of the lot of the playlists and suggestions right now across all the apps. You can actually make royalties out of that. So I feel someone's going to do that. Someone's going to do that in the Indian space. Again, Hadi Sandhu, I'm telling you.
Awesome. I will switch gears into my favorite topic, which has not much to do with NFTs, but it has to do with consumer brands. And there's so much that's happened in this space. I think this year has really been the year for consumer brands. You've seen, multiple consumer brands sort of morph into house of brands. You've seen consumer brands raise more money than ever before, and you've seen consumer brands sort of break into the unicorn club, right? Whether it's the Liciouses of the world, or what MyGlam's been able to do, and hopefully many more as we go along. So just a quick recap of the news in the past 10 to 14 days. Saint Botanica, which apparently is in talks to be acquired by MyGlam as per the Economic Times, has roped in Kareena Kapoor Khan as an ambassador. Why that choice is made, Varun, I'm going to
Mm.
ask you actually, as a digital media and marketing expert. Sleepy Owl, a favorite coffee brand for
Yeah.
many, has raised $6.5 million from their existing investors. We've also seen a lot of interesting action happen across multiple different categories. Interestingly enough, beauty and skincare still seems to be absorbing a lot of angel money and VC money at
Yeah.
large. There's a brand called Mother Sparsh, which is a premium Ayurvedic and natural baby and mother care brand that has apparently raised money from ITC, which is super interesting because you really don't see ITC making too many early stage startup-ish kind of bets. 10 Club, who we briefly referred to in our last episode, that another of those Thrasio aggregator models, they have acquired three gardening startups. One is called Craft Seeds, there's Gate Garden, and there's Kriti Kalash. But gardening as and home as a space generally is a space I'm bullish on, which we'll get to in just a bit. Mosaic Wellness, which is the one that runs Man Matters and Be Body Wise,
Yeah.
they've raised 24 million from Sequoia, and this is really cool pet food startup called Dog Seed Chew, which has raised about 7 million from 6 Sense Ventures. They basically sell dog treats and dog food. So lots and lots of action continues to happen in the consumer brand space, and I am absolutely obsessed with this space. But first question for you: why the hell would a new age consumer brand rope in, I mean, Kareena Kapoor Khan is great and all of that, but what's the logic there? Why would you rope in a slightly, I don't want to say, dated, because she's still very relevant, but
Yeah.
why would you rope her in as your brand ambassador?
So, if you kind of talk to most of these startups, right, they go through a point, I think early on, even focuses on performance, kind of pushing out as much sale as possible. They all hit a point where they need to build brand, and they all kind of go for, and I think it's required. You need to kind of build brand, you need to bring someone in. I feel the reason why they brought her on is, if you look at the interesting part about Kareena Kapoor, is that she has, in many ways, kept herself relevant because she has let herself evolve. Like right now, if you look at how she has been, like the fact that I think was it Puma, who she did stuff,
Yeah,
or Reebok, I forget.
when it was with
Uh,
Puma, yeah, when she was pregnant.
with Puma, right? Yeah, and she's been open about showing sides of hers, which honestly no other actress has been open to in that. Everyone kind of feels like more of the same, except for a few of them. Obviously, there's Deepika Padukone and Alia Bhatt who play on a different league altogether, and then there's a lot of people. But Karina's almost like a genre to herself, and I think she's been able to stand out. The only weirdness of this choice is that because she moved from doing stuff, obviously there's some stuff she does with Lakme, and with if I remember right, with Wow as well. She's done some stuff with Wow as well. um, I
Correct.
don't know how much this will differentiate things for the brand itself, because I think she's been associated with too many things already. Could they have gone with someone else? Not sure, but I'm about 50-50 on this choice. I don't think it'll do anything new for the brand though. I think it'll just make them feel like a legitimate brand which has like a A-list celebrity as a brand ambassador. But beyond that, I don't think it'll do much.
Yeah, I agree, and again, I don't fully get Kareena Kapoor Khan as a choice. I understand that she still has reach and all of that, but why not, pay her to do a couple of Instagram posts for you versus bringing her on board as a brand ambassador? That seems to be a question mark. I think two other pieces of news that really stood out for me was Ten Clubs' investments in the gardening space.
Mhm.
Now, home and kitchen, and I don't say this because I am a home and kitchen like extra enthusiast, and because home and kitchen are super popular categories on our platform, but generally I'm super bullish on this category for the very simple reason that it's to date been a very unbranded category, and there genuinely is an opportunity to create a lot of brands ground up. And I love that they have dipped their toes in gardening of all segments. Interestingly, there's another consumer brand startup called Ugao, which is in the same space, and they basically sell plants and planters and this, that, and the other, which I think picked up a round from DSG, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
But what's your take, man? Gardening, D2C, do you see this
I have a
space,
question on this one
blowing
though.
up? Hmm.
I know people started getting excited about gardening through lockdown because everyone's at home and they were trying to find stuff to do at home. Do you see this still scaling up, or was it more like, because you know how people started baking, I think the first 6 months of lockdown, or cooking at home, and eventually people just kind of moved on from that in many ways. Do you think this will stick on, that people will continue to do this more and more?
100%. And I think, and I'll tell you why, right? I think of all the categories that are out there, whether it's beauty or it's fashion, each of them has seen everything from content, media, and brand networks being built, from day one, right? So 10 years ago, and to some extent, one could argue that the likes of, Nykaa and a lot of international beauty brands, they really created that culture of, beauty creators, right? I think one category that has just not been touched at all has been this general loose segment of home and kitchen. Now,
Mm.
with gardening, you're totally right. It is a niche. It's a very specific niche. So, whether one of these companies, and obviously not Craft Seeds, Gate Garden, and Kriti Kalash, but if you pick up a company like Ugao, it could potentially be a
Mm.
part of the roster of a Pepper Fry or one of these other
Yeah,
brands as they
yeah.
go deeper into home, as a space. So I think generally in the category of home and kitchen, there is a massive opportunity to build interesting things. Unfortunately, this category has only been serviced through two lenses. One has been mattresses and the other has been furniture. And of course, you've
Mm.
now got players like, not now, but in the past couple of years, you've had players like Livespace and Homelane really,
Yeah.
build out the category of kitting out one's home and doing up one's home. But I really do
Yeah.
think that the long tail of this category will become very interesting over a period of time. And there will be
Yeah.
opportunities for these brands to either be acquired, or, for example, for 10 Club to build out basically like a roster of all things home as they acquire more brands and scale this up. So as a
Yeah.
category at large, I think what happened to fashion about 10, 15 odd years ago in the Indian context, which was fashion became fast. I think home is also going to become fast, where people will look for cheap, affordable ways to make the spaces that they live in more interesting and unique. But obviously it has to be married with enough content being created in this space, because content is really what creates that top of funnel. But you're seeing that happen now, man. You're seeing that happen on YouTube, on Instagram, and just a number of new home gardening, etc. creators
That's so
coming
true.
up.
I think also services, right? Products and services. The interesting part about, as you were speaking, I was thinking the fact that you don't have to just look at one piece. You can actually look at recurring services, which means you can have recurring revenue in that sense coming in, because you say, okay, I'll come and
Yeah.
maintain. Because I'm just thinking about the fact that people have, let's say, the traditional Mali coming in every month and kind of working on the plants and kind of going away. That can become someone wearing a urban company T-shirt.
Yes, Urban Mali, walking
Urban
in and
Mali.
fixing your. I think the other company that I really want to talk about is Dogsy Chew, which is
Mm.
a pet food startup. You have one dog, two dogs,
Two dogs. I grew
two
up with
dogs.
13
Yeah,
dogs, but I have two dogs.
lovely.
My
So
grandmother
Varun
had a
has
problem. My grandmother had
Varun has
problems.
two
She had 13
super.
dogs while growing up. 13 dogs, guys. I have 13 dogs growing up.
But that
It's not
sounds
a weird number.
amazing. That
Yeah.
sounds so. And like the big ones or the tiny ones?
No, I had 12 Dachshunds and one Pomeranian. I don't know what
Oh
that one
my
Pomeranian was doing. Poor guy.
God. Is your grandmother the Queen of England, Varun? Exact. You'd have to get corgis then.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, pets again is a category that I know you're very passionate about, as am I.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about pets as a segment is it's dominated by food. You've
Yeah.
obviously had the likes of Heads Up for Tails and Super Tails who've
Exactly.
really built this category as a suite of products, right? But with Dogsy Chew, you have someone being very focused about this category of dog treats and dog food, and that they've been able to lap up a significant amount of money from actually a very good fund is no new news. But you tell me, Varun, would you invest in Dogsy Chew, this pet food startup?
Um, I'm not sure, to be honest, because there's a lot of products already available for dog chew, and I feel that also I'm seeing a lot of people moving towards that's like homemade. Because that is what we used to have, right? We have homemade food many ways for dogs. Like our dogs don't have any outside food; pretty much everything's made at home. And I feel that my worry is that how do you kind of stand out if you just have one product category? I think they will have to expand, though, is what I feel. Unless what they're offering is something that has something which other products don't, and I don't know enough about them, but they do need to diversify. And this also because, like, I've had conversations with the Heads Up for Tails founder. She's been on Advertising is Dead, and um, I feel her why they kind of worked well is because they did multiple things, right? Obviously, there's a marketplace. They also kind of help in pet care. They also have physical stores. That's why we've been able to
So
scale.
pets as an experience.
Yeah, yeah. You want to take you want to take your pet there. You want if and also thing is you go there to buy pet food, you will end up buying a pet toy. You will end up seeing something else. You'll pick it up, right?
Heads Up
It's
for
like
Tails is like like it's
Disneyland.
just, yeah, it is Disneyland, and it's like the best and the worst thing that happens to my credit card, because you walk in with a sole focus of picking up one bowl, and the next thing you know, you have like a dog jacket, Tuffy
Yes.
wearing a friend's hat that probably was bought as a part of an
Someone has to make that.
excursion
We
to.
should make that merch. Tuffy hat for dogs.
Yes, we should tell Rashi to make that merch. But a lot
Yes.
of new brands coming up. I wanted to give a shout out to a few of my favorites. And the ones that I've discovered is there's this really cool brand called Sober, which is India's first distilled non-alcoholic spirit.
Oh,
And they describe themselves as a non-alcoholic gin. I haven't tried it, but I
yeah.
find this whole space of aperitifs and aperitifs. How do you say it? Someone correct my pronunciation before I
I have no
vinyl this.
idea.
Okay, so
Aperitif.
basically, like, Yeah, aperitif. Yeah, so
Affirmative.
you've got this whole like bougie space, really breaking out in the US, and of course, low alcohol content. Yeah, low alcohol content. Alcohol. That whole space is also really boomed, in the US with the sort of breaking out of seltzers and the likes. So let's see how sober shapes up in
Yeah.
a beer guzzling country like India.
But sober
Have you
drinks
checked it
has
out?
been doing the rounds. Swami launched a bunch of them as well. Sometime back, there was non-alcoholic gin and tonic, non-alcoholic rum and
Rum
coke,
and
which is actually
cola.
quite,
Yeah.
yeah, which these tastes like actually make me sound really old. But if anybody remembers, there used to be a roller cola at some point of time
Yes.
when when we were all children. Um, uh, I was like, wow, this tastes like roller cola, and they're like, oh, we never thought of that. I'm like, so it's interesting. I have friends who have bought those because end of the day, if you have a couple of friends over, you're hanging out, the one who doesn't drink ends up having to drink juice, right? So you finally have an alternative to giving them juice, and I think that's really. I mean, I do think this is a category that will grow as people, but as long as it's healthy to drink in some level, people are going to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, then there's a couple of others that I want to quickly give a shout out to. There's a company called Eat with Better. Super
Mm,
nice. They're trying to make kathal cool again. And basically, like, you
nice,
get this, jackfruit that comes with like curries and you can mix it all up again in the ready to cook
amazing.
space. Super cool. There's another brand that I'm obsessed with. It's called Born Good. It's a plant-based cleaning product brand, and I have literally all of my like Lysol has been replaced with their stuff. My Vim has been replaced with their stuff. My detergent has been replaced with their stuff. Really, really good brand. There's a really cool brand called Alt Co, which is bringing oat milk to India. I tried this brand recently. Super interesting. Reminds me a lot of Silk. There's another very cool brand called Coparo that who I describe as Sasta Aesop. Aesop, like that soap company, the bougie soap
Sasta
company. So this
ESOP
is
is
like
also not what you call when you have an employee in a bad company. Sasta ESOP, me like, sorry, bad joke.
we will let that pass. And two really cool beauty brands that I've discovered and bought is one is this brand called Asa,
Mm,
ASA. They do
mm.
this really cool thing where you can basically reuse parts of their like foundation powder thingamajig. It's much more easy if you just go to their website and check it out. But really beautiful packaging, a slightly steep vis-a-vis their pricing, but high quality product. And this other excellent brand called True Frog, which I'm
Yes.
obsessed with. They're
Should
like
do like
skincare
we need
products,
to do
hair
like
care.
an Amazon what do you call on this show saying if people click on the link in the show notes you can buy these products and we make a slight amount of commission out of this.
Excuse me, all of most these products are on LBB. So if there's any commission
Yes,
we're
well done, well
making,
done. My
yes,
newest find
for
has been
subtle
Secret
plug.
Alchemist with their
It's so
anxiety roll
good.
on. So
I
nice.
don't think it helps with my
Nice.
anxiety, but like it
It
smells
doesn't. It
really
just
good.
smells
So
nice.
yeah, yeah, it's
We have also
it
been told
smells
we've
really
been
nice.
yapping too long before our deep dive. And we are
Shit.
50 minutes into an episode where our producer is like, guys, this has been a deep dive
Happy
on everything.
editing.
What is
Happy
the point
editing.
of deeping diving if you guys are not going to get, you're going to deep dive into everything? But
Okay,
yes, we've
you're
been told
like
we
deep
need to stop
diving.
talking about products.
Yes. And we need to switch gears to a break. So we will quickly take a break and then we will be back with our deep dive.
Welcome back to Think Fast, where now we are going to, we were supposed to go into a deep dive on social commerce, but considering how much we have yapped away this episode, we will go into a shallow dive into social commerce and come back into it later.
Congratulations on a joke that you rehearsed 5 times, Varun. Your parents must be
Yes,
really proud you're not a doctor.
while you were at break. I'm like, shallow dive.
While you-
Shallow
Okay,
dive.
guys, focus, focus, focus. Okay,
Yeah.
so we guys are going to talk about social commerce. Obviously, there's social commerce has been again one of those like Twitter favorite topics that gets many hot takes and long threads. I'm going to kick off with just defining what social commerce is. Social commerce essentially utilizes social networks, peer-to-peer communication, and online media to buy and sell products in a nutshell. Another way to define social commerce is assisted sales, where someone is assisting you, whether it's a stranger or a friend, but it's another person who's helping you get one step closer to making the sale. In the Indian context, there have really been two buckets. So I think bucket number one has been using existing social media platforms to drive sales and distribution. So for example, Meesho or Flipkart's more recently launched Shopsy. The other sort of bucket is using or leveraging influencers to drive sales, right? And the manifestations of those have been three. One is like live streaming. So there were two, very like popular-ish apps. There was SimSim and Bulbul, and we'll talk about them in just a bit. So live streaming is one of that. Second is teleconsult. So basically, calling someone up, whether it's through an app or whatever else, and having them sort of, tell you what to buy for yourself, your, home, whatever else. And then your third is essentially creating tools for influencers, so influencers can, monetize their ability to drive sales for a particular brand more conveniently, or more easily. So those are largely the two buckets, dear listeners, for social commerce, or at least how it exists. If you look at why social commerce really came up, and the earlier theses around social commerce, there were basically two. One was that, traditional e-com platforms have benefited, only your top 100 million shoppers. And the reason why, the rest of the janta which is on the internet, the reason why they're not shopping as frequently as they could, through e-com products, is because they don't trust the platforms. And therefore, social commerce became a way to solve for trust, right? So if Varun sends me a link to something, there's a higher chance of me buying it versus me, landing on some random Amazon page and then, scratching my head saying, chahiye nahi chahiye, kharidu nahi kharidu, can I trust this seller or can I not? So basically, the real thesis was, can social commerce really be an enabler to get more folks who aren't using the internet to make purchases? And the way social commerce was thought through in, or in its more earlier avatars, was essentially solving for trust. Now, has it done either of those two is a big sort of question mark, because if you, look at Misho, or if you look at Shopsy, it's obviously, enabled a new type of distribution. But a question that still remains to be answered is, has it unlocked a new kind of shopper who, wasn't necessarily using the internet before, to shop? So let's kick off with our 2 cents on this, right? Varun, when you think of the construct of social commerce, and specifically within these two buckets, what in your opinion have been like the wins and losses, and maybe, some juxtaposition against international companies that have done a good job of social commerce?
So, um, I've seen, at least from the Indian context, I've seen the fact that social commerce has worked when you go very, very targeted, right? I think the fitness space is a great example. If you look at it, a lot of people do end up buying products through influencers, through creators, through this kind of a push. Because in many ways, what you buy, you also ask your community, right? You are also trying to, if somebody uses, let's say, a protein powder, you will end up buying that because, okay, this person already uses it. So I feel in India, we're also very averse, like you said, it in many ways to kind of take up something new. We've always been that. We want to sample stuff, and we also like to shop. So in broader categories, I think it's a lot tougher. But in razor focused categories, let's say fitness, you're talking about, I'm thinking of some of the other ones. I don't even think beauty is there yet, because I feel that in many ways people are choosing what they want to choose. So there are some parts which is going to do really well. Finance is another one, right? I'm seeing, for instance, a lot of
Small
stuff happening in
case.
the person small case.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, if you look at, let's say, Variku's posts over there, he's done so much content around Zeroda and small case. You're looking at something like what Tanmay has done in the past on that front. You have like these are creators who are putting stuff out about platforms, and people are moving towards them. So I feel that the more razor sharp, and it's an interesting point, because most of these things, when they as they get adopted, they never adopted at mass. They're always adopted in niches and eventually scale up to mass. And if you look at how these are being sold as well, then we're not selling them the way it's happened, let's say, in China or anywhere else globally. We're doing it in our own way. But I think the big gap has actually been a lack of a marketplace model. Like, it's still like on standard, like, influencer agency and everything else. But I feel that as people start building platforms where, let's say, as a creator, I can kind of log on and see opportunities, maybe kind of tap into that and do that. I know the guys at Big Bang Social have built something out like that, very early stage for them on that front. So it's interesting to see what they're doing there. But I think that's really where things will change. It will change when you have a marketplace system for this, and not people to people, because end of the day, brands still have to go through, let's say, an agency or an individual or a manager, and I think that actually makes it a lot slower. And I think that's where it's kind of gotten stuck a little bit. We need innovation there in just that, how things connect together.
Yeah, so I think, obviously, in my opinion, I think Meesho is like the peak of what,
Yeah,
P2P commerce as such looks
I
like
agree.
in the Indian context, right? Because what they've really been able to do is take your models of like Tupperware and Amway and, put them on acid and really create what they've been able to create, through their product, right? But if you look at the kind of investments that Meesho's had to make, it's really no joke. I mean, you need to hold inventory, you need to have
Yeah,
genuinely a frictionless commerce experience, because a lot of the a lot of these purchases that are made are end up being impulse purchases, especially at the scale at
yeah,
which Meesho is operating right now. So, for example, if you look at Meesho's average order value, it actually ends up earning in the side of comparable almost to the Swiggies and Zomatos of the world, versus comparable to platforms like Myntra, Nykaa, and the likes, which actually operate in the same category. So one of the best categories for Meesho, at least, or the more recent reports that I've read, has been categories like fashion, right? And fashion again is a category that plays very well in the unbranded space. So I think where like the quote unquote Meesho or like Flipkart Shopsy model becomes interesting is if you're playing in categories that are highly unbranded, if you're playing in categories where the customer is likely to make an impulse purchase, and if you're basically making the experience of impulse purchase plus peer-to-peer setting as frictionless as is possible, which means you really need to invest in infrastructure. If I had to switch gears to what you said, right, which is really using influencers to drive sales or giving them the tools and the capability that they need to even measure the impact that they've had, again, there have been a lot of experiments. There was SimSim and Bulbul, which were launched a couple of years ago. SimSim has sold to YouTube. Bulbul, I think, sort of tapered down from their previous avatar of live streaming, and video commerce is what they refer to themselves as, and are now focusing more on creator tools and using tools to help creators generate success. There are obviously platforms like Roposo and Trell that have sort of experimented with this influencer led commerce. How much success they've had is a bit of a question mark. I spent
mhm.
a little bit of time on Roposo, and it just seemed like there were a lot of like nice looking women and a lot of like very horny men because a lot of the comments on like the live streams were, "Hi, you look beautiful, you are great."
But there actually been
But
a lot of these, right? I remember a while back when, and this is almost like a couple of years, right? We've seen a lot of platforms which said that the more like, there was also a lot of live selling in that sense. People have tried, but you're right. It becomes a lot more about guys commenting on girls, and girls like
and that's what
saying, "Why the fuck
happens.
am I doing
And
this?"
yeah, and you hit the nail on the head, right? That's what happens when you sort of don't have like a category that you focus on and really build very specifically for that category,
Yeah,
right? So if you look at like where this becomes successful, like think of it in the form of like a Venn diagram. So and here's why Instagram or like platforms like TikTok are best poised to actually have an impact over here, because they have three things going for them, right? First is proprietary creators. I think the big issue in the Indian social commerce app space is none of them have been able to build proprietary creators. A lot of them have actually had to pay popular
yeah,
creators on Instagram and YouTube to come and create on their platform. What that the long term results that leads to is a big question mark, right? Versus TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, where creators have been built on that. Like Mr. Beast is a YouTube product.
yeah,
He's not an implant from somewhere else who started creating content on YouTube. I think the second secret sauce is secret ingredient is absurdly awesome DAO to MAO. So you need
mm,
like the customer coming to you at a certain frequency and assuming that at X frequency the customer will end up making a transaction through your app. So basically helping your user transition into a shopper. So that's a second ingredient of the secret sauce. And the third is supply niche, exactly what you
yeah,
said, which is somewhere you need to be really focused about what category you're going after, and then really problem solve for everything from supply chain to brands, merchants, SKUs, and even creators for those categories. So, for example, in the American context, and there are a lot of social commerce plays coming up, all of them are vertical. Like Super Great is a vertical play. Then there was another one called Newness or something, which is also a
okay,
vertical play. There's another really cool product called Shop My Shelf, which again is a vertical play, and they're all focused. Only on beauty, but it's basically in this like Venn diagram of these three things: proprietary creators, absurdly awesome DAO to mouse, and supply niche. It's in the middle of this where magic lies. In fact, there's this really cool platform that you should check out. It's called Whatnot. It's a
Mhm.
YC funded company. It's a YC incubated and funded company. Again, recently raised a significant amount of money. They sell collectibles. So basically, like you find like collectibles on whatnot, and again, it's all
Yeah.
live streaming. Proprietary creators, all these boxes are checked, but we haven't really seen, Indian platforms been able to do too many of these three at scale.
I think also so there's an interesting thing about what's happened in India, right? As social commerce became what it became in China, India was still at an early stage in this whole influencer creator space and how to sell on social. And by the time it kind of picked up steam, I feel creators also are looking at things very differently now. People are trying to figure out, okay, because not everybody wants to get a million followers anymore. You're just trying to figure out, can I get 1,000 people, 2,000 people? What can I sell them? So people are doing courses, they're doing stuff they can sell directly. So they don't need brands as much, although everybody wants brand deals. So we're at this weird point where creators are turning around and saying, okay, this is how much I want to do, this is how much I don't want to do. And in the middle of that, I don't think people necessarily want to go onto another platform to sell unless they get
Yeah,
additional perks, like you said. So they're saying, why can't I just do this on Instagram? I already have an audience here. Why will I pull my audience there? So somewhere in between this, and if you look to the US for an example, you have this growth of platforms that are helping creators build almost like pages for themselves where you can aggregate, okay, these are my courses, these are products which I'm offering that you can buy, this is merch which I have. So I think eventually the marketplace will be individual creators having their own pages, and then you can buy whatever is there. But this emulating the China model here, I feel it might even be a little late in some cases. So I don't know if I will
yeah.
go there specifically. I'm way too invested in my Instagram, in my YouTube. But maybe in some way, that's one part of the problem. The other part is brands have taken a long time to move towards this, right? I remember very early on the influencer agency space, which kind of started off in India. Someone said that you're never going to have a brand come in and self-serve. They will want an agency to service them, to tell them what they should do. So the process is still like an old school media buy. Now it has changed to a reasonable extent, and they're open to a marketplace, but it's still like you mostly have the agency operate the marketplace. So I think the problem also lies in how we function as an ecosystem. We haven't really evolved as a brand and agency ecosystem to really latch onto this. So even if a Misho is doing this now, but I'm like, they could have done it 3 years ago. It's just that the market wasn't ready to accept this as a way to do things. So I think the problem also lies with that, is that we didn't evolve fast enough.
Yeah, and if you look at like China, which just operates in a totally different orbit, and that's really where
Yeah.
you've seen successful models. And in my opinion, you've seen successful models because there is no Instagram there, right? There is no
Mm.
YouTube there. So there have been opportunities, obviously, for entrepreneurs to create products that bring all these worlds together. Obviously, the two large examples over there are Pinduoduo or PDD, and there's Taobao. There's
Mm.
another really interesting company called Little Red Book or Xiaohongshu,
Mm.
and again they operate at a subscale level. But if I had to give you an example of Taobao, right, we were discussing this example earlier. There's a guy who's called the lipstick king of China.
Mm.
His name is Austin Lee Jiaqi. He moved $1.7 billion worth of products in a 12-hour live stream. And there's another creator Via, who moved $1.25 billion worth of products, again, in a 12-hour live stream. And if you just look at the scale at which this is happening, it's definitely not necessarily translated anywhere with respect to the Indian context. And you're seeing everyone try this out, right? I don't know if you saw, but both Nika and Mintra are trying to do live streaming and live
Yeah.
shopping experiences on their app. You've got Flipkart that recently partnered with Moj, where
Yeah.
Flipkart products can be sold through Moj creators and this, that, and the other. Again, early days, how it shapes up, we'll only find out a little later. But if I had to really reflect on challenges in this space, right, like one big challenge is somewhere the infra game needs to change, where
Yeah.
commerce truly needs to become frictionless, right? Like if me buying a product that you're selling, if it's an impulse purchase, how do you make it really easy and quick for me to get this product without any amount of like friction in between the discovery and the
Yeah.
transaction? I think the second is, I don't think, similar to how like e-commerce, the story of e-commerce has played out more in edutech than it necessarily has in like, lifestyle commerce. I think there's a really interesting opportunity to think outside the box, right? So why does social commerce have to be only about selling beauty and fashion products, which is how it's happened in the West or in China, why can't it be in categories like astrology? In fact, there's this really cool
Hmm.
app called Guruji, which I'm obsessed with, which is like a marketplace of like astrologers and tarot card readers and this, that, and the other.
If it works in spirituality, it'll work in everything else.
You
Everything
mentioned this.
it's the biggest it's the biggest market in the country. Spirituality is number one across anything.
Yeah,
Yes, sorry, I cut you off.
and why does spirituality work? It works because spirituality is embedded in inefficiency. I think, to the
Hmm.
point that you made earlier, right? Like there are some categories where actually the joy of peer-to-peer interaction or the joy of live streaming is in the inefficiency of consuming that category if it was just on a
Yeah,
traditional product display page. So I think
yeah,
I think there is a really unique opportunity of problem solving for categories where consumers enjoy inefficiency, where they
yeah.
enjoy the banter, they enjoy the भाई ठीक है मुझे तीन और चीजें बताओ, right? And on this Guruji app it's really cool because, like, if you're the tarot card reader, first, so I have to pay you, right, for me to
Hmm.
get a reading from you. The second is
Yeah.
I can make microtransactions while listening to you. So you're basically selling me all of these malas and like rings and this, that, and the other. It really is a way for all of us to look more like Bappi Lahiri. But I think, yeah,
But
infrastructure is
virtually,
one,
right?
and second,
And that's a good part. You're selling them all as virtual. It's like a game. Like how you can
yeah.
buy badges and you could buy like different kind of mods. You're just buying. Here's my like. You're doing all these things online. Less wastage though. It's eco-friendly.
Metaverse, everything is happening in the
Metaverse is
metaverse.
eco-friendly. Yes.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I think I think social commerce is just unfortunately, till now, like the existence of it has been very cut, copy, paste of like
Yeah.
China and America. And I think there really is a way of like putting like a Indian like butter chicken tikka masala spin to how social
Yeah.
commerce currently exists.
Guruji will do it. Guruji will move it towards this.
I
Babajis and
will invest
Gurujis.
in.
Yes.
That's all
Yes, he will
that's
invest in
left.
this. As they're looking for investors. I'm sure Baba Ramdev's already invested into them. But that's a whole
Oh
different story.
God. Yes, I would not take his
Yes, so we have
money.
done a very long episode, but we have some what the fuck news to end this episode off with.
Not what the fuck news at my end, but there definitely is a recommendation that I want. Do you have what the fuck news at your end? I think the only what the fuckery was like, and it wasn't really what the fuck, but like Zara's new CEO is interesting. Not CEO, chairman.
I don't mind that. I mean, I've always been. I also feel always that you should have the family take over, let's say, chairman or like majority shareholder roles, and not necessarily be the operational people there. The Walmart thing is a great example of that. How that can work really well. So I don't really have a problem. I also feel that now we look at any family business, I think succession. Uh, it's a problem that show has made us all believe all family business,
Fuck
and
off.
they mostly are like that. Let me be honest. But I don't think it's a wrong thing. I think family businesses do succeed really well. Um, it's just one thing, and she's been with the company for 15 years. I mean, just to kind of like for people who haven't read the news, the Zara chairman, the founder and chairman who's stepping down, his daughter's taking over the chairman role. Um,
Ortega is
yeah,
her name.
but everyone says pretty much he's going to be running it from behind the scenes, is what I think there was a BBC article about it, which said.
Got it. So
Yes, I don't
basically,
really what the
there's
fuck
a,
though.
yeah, not really. Do you have any what the fuck news?
My only what the fuck news was the fact that I have no what the fuck news.
No, actually, there is one. We are like ruining this part. No, but there's one. Remember, I shared this with you that
Yes.
apparently limb lengthening searches are through the roof thanks to dating apps. So apparently, like the
What?
one biggest filter used in like Bumble or Tinder or the likes. I'm not on any of those apps because I have been happily with my partner for the past 8 years. But in the
Neither have I.
dating game, yeah, in the dating game, one of the most popularly used filters is height. So like women want to make sure that the men that they're
But
dating
just
are
can't you just
tall.
like not give the right height? Or I don't know how that
I
works. I've
mean,
never used a dating app.
neither do I. But apparently, because there are all and on Bumble or one of these apps, it's apparently a paid feature. So I need to pay to be able to unlock the height of the dude because women don't want to turn up at a date, with someone. I don't know what this height construct is, but apparently it is a thing. And limb lengthening searches have gone up on the internet. So in this week's What the Fuck News, everyone apparently wants to become taller, which is interesting and enlightening all at the same time. But let's
Yes.
screw the What the Fuck news segment and maybe talk a little bit about recommendations. So, Varun, what are you going to leave our listeners with this week? What's the one thing you recommend?
What's the one thing I recommend is the fact that, and I never thought I'll say this, that if you really want to understand NFTs, watch some recent Gary Vee videos. I haven't recommended Gary Vee in a long time, but truly, he's explaining it in the right way. I was a person who watched a lot of Gary Vee at one point of time, and then I was a person who stopped watching Gary Vee altogether. I've gone back because he's explaining it in actually a really good way. And he's, as always, Gary Vee seems to do things before everybody else does it. So watch Gary Vee content on what he's doing on VFriends and in general, because he's gotten into this before everybody else has.
Awesome. And I think my recommendation for everyone, because you mentioned succession and family business, is there's this super, super, super cool podcast, which is basically a behind the scenes of everything that happens at vis-a-vis, like, shooting off Succession. And basically it's a podcast. I'm forgetting what it's called, but just search for Succession. And Kara Swisher is the host. And basically she
Oh.
like, yeah, she analyzes every single episode. And in fact, she analyzed the last episode with one of Hollywood's biggest party planners. For those of you who aren't Succession stands over here, please jump on the bandwagon. But yeah, this podcast is excellent because she brings on board producers from the show, writers of the show. She really helps contextualize every single episode. So yeah, the Succession podcast, the official Succession HBO podcast, is what I would recommend.
And I'm going to say that by the end of this, a few episodes of this show, we will be competing with Amit Verma on duration. Amit Verma, we finally going to be took two of us to beat you, but we still have not reached your 3 hour point.
Yeah, no, but yeah, we have not hung fast at all, Varun. We should
No, no.
just change the
I,
name of the
I
show.
don't think we can think fast. I think the point is we ramble on. The show has been renamed from Think Fast to Ramble On. Ramble on about everything around startups, business, marketing, and weirdly enough, my grandmother's 13 dogs,
She's the Queen of
who had
England.
great names. She had names which honestly felt like she threw utensils on the floor and named her Dinky, Pinky, Chinky,
What
Tammy,
the
Misha,
fuck?
Jangu, Mangu. I'm forgetting some names. There was 13 of them. But that is literally the names of the dogs I grew up with,
Oh
guys.
my
Royal
god.
Ramble. Oh yeah,
Royal
Bora has come with the
Ramble.
name. And if you guys are still listening now, in true Colin Samir style, my favorite YouTube channel to understand the creator economy. This is basically, we call this the later gang. People who have stuck on till this point of time. You are the later gang of Think Fast. And thank you for sticking on for this long. We will try to be faster and think more next time.
Yes, and on that note, bye.
Bye, guys. Do not be like Ashi.
IVM.